Alright guys, today I'm going to be working with some big snakes and I thought I'd bring you guys along for the ride. And if you've been watching my videos, you know I'm mainly into keeping and breeding ball pythons. And this snake around my neck happens to be a lesser clown ball python female. And really this is pretty much as big as a ball python will get, not much bigger. This, you know, the females are getting maybe another foot maximum, a little bit bigger around, but this is not the monster snake. And when I got into ball pythons, you know, I probably had at any one point, I'll have like 150 ball pythons in this room, and every week those ball pythons eat one rat a piece, and you multiply that by, you know, every month it's like hundreds and hundreds of rats every single month. And I'm going through and I decided to buy my own rat breeding operation. It's on this side of the room. My ball pythons are on the other sides of the room over here, and I produce an incredible amount of rats. The problem is it saves me money, but the problem is the rats get too big when they're adult, especially the retired ones, for these ball pythons. So then I started thinking I really need a big snake to eat all of my, you know, retired rats. And so I started thinking, you know, boas and stuff like that, and I decided to get into reticulated pythons, and mainly because there's so many color patterns, and I'd say it almost rivals the colors and patterns of ball pythons, the amount of colors and patterns in the reticulated pythons. The problem is most of the colors and patterns are in the mainland reticulated pythons, and they haven't really worked them into the dwarf and super dwarf retics. And if you think about the mainlands will actually get up to 300 pounds. And a 300 pound snake, you know, I decided, you know, that is too big for me. And as a matter of fact, if you get a mainland, it'll pretty much outgrow rats, and you'll end up feeding it like rabbits or small goats, or you know, stuff like that. You know, so I've seen some people feed them pigs and all kinds of crazy stuff when they get really big. But you know, I wanted a retic, but in a smaller package. So what I did is I bought two reticulated pythons. One is 50% Jampea dwarf, and then I was using her to pretty much use up all the rats that I had that were retiring, the old breeders. And then I found this ad on Craigslist with a super dwarf male reticulated python, and I bought that one, and I've had them for a couple of years, and I tried to breed them this year. So I'm kind of going through the breeding cycle of reticulated pythons, and we're pretty much at the end of where I'm pairing them up this year. And what I'm really doing is kind of going through a cycle of breeding. So what I do is I pair them up and then let them breed for a couple weeks, and then I separate them, and then I feed them after I separate them, because you can't really feed snakes together. And then after I feed them really heavy, then what I do is let them go through the shed, and once they go through the shed, I pair them up again and kind of repeat the cycle. So where I'm kind of at in the cycle right now, I paired them up 3 times this year, and pretty much finished pairing them up. I just separated them last week. It's been about a week since I separated them. So what I'm doing now is both of them are really giving me the eye, I'm thinking that they're gonna both eat some rats. And really the male has been fasting for, I'd say the male's been fasting for about 6 months now, so he's looking really super skinny. And I was just looking at him. I have a clear window on the tub, and it looks like he's kind of eyeing me, maybe wanting a rat. So what I'm going to do today is I'm going to try to feed him a rat, and I'm going to see if Lucy will take a rat. She's kind of pacing back and forth like she wants to take one, and I'm not sure if she's just building eggs. A lot of times when they build eggs and they start getting thicker and thicker, they'll go off of food. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to try to feed both of these snakes and see if they'll take rats. And pretty much from here is she'll either lay eggs or she won't. I'm going to keep them separated until next fall. So it's probably another, I'd say, you know, if she lays eggs, I'd say it would be probably within a couple months, and then probably 2 or 3 months after that, I'll think about pairing them up again. So I'm going to try to feed these these big snakes and see if they'll take some rats. Let's check it out. All right, so I'm going to start with Sunny. He is my purple albino. He's part super dwarf, part dwarf, and only 12.5% mainland. And I think that's pretty much why he's staying pretty small. pretty small. It's 30 pounds for a retic. That's pretty small. And I have this freshly prepared rat. Let's see if he'll take this rat. It's always exciting with these retics. We'll see how he takes this. You never know what's going to happen here. Oh, woo! That was a little bit crazy. So that is actually his very first rat in like 7 months. That's pretty exciting. Look at how big he is. That is a pretty big snake. Whew, that kind of freaked me out. All right, that's pretty exciting. I like when my snakes eat. Oh. All right, let's go over and see if Lucy will take a rat. All right, so this is Lucy. She's 50% Jampea dwarf reticulated python, and the interesting thing is, you notice she is actually a white albino, the other one's a purple albino, so kind of the big cutting edge thing right now is trying to work a lot of these mainland color pattern mutations down into the dwarf and the super dwarf. So basically the idea is to take the mainland crossed with, you know, like a Jampea dwarf, which doesn't really have any morphs in the Jampea dwarf. So when you mix them together, you get 50-50. So this is 50% mainland, 50% Jampea dwarf. And then really, what you really want to do is take, you know, the super dwarf back into this. And then what happens is you kind of shrink down the snake more and more, and you get like a 75% dwarf. And then you can go further and further and further and kind of shrink the snake down and down and down. That's kind of the cutting edge. What everyone's trying to do is trying to get all the mainland retic morphs down into a smaller package so it's a little bit easier to handle. So I'm preparing a rat right now. I think it's pretty much ready. So let's see if Lucy will take a rat. All right, so I'm not sure if she's gonna take a rat or not. I have a really big, probably the biggest rat that I've ever produced. I actually weighed it, and it is 497 grams, I'd say. That's probably as big as a small groundhog, I would say. That's probably the biggest rat that I've ever seen. It's really huge, and she can definitely take those big rats. That's what I bought her for, to eat up my old kind of retired males. And this male rat, he's probably, I'd say about 3 years old, so you know they only live about 3 years, so he's pretty much at the end of his life. As a matter of fact, if I don't feed enough rats to these guys, my rats will pass away in the racks. They'll just pass away from old age. So this is a really good way to use them up at the end of their life to where they're useful, and I can feed my snake with these rats. So I'm going to throw it in there, see if she'll take this rat. Do I dare get in there and move it? I think she'll find it. She's thinking about it. You know, it's funny. It's like when I separate them and I give her a first rat, she's really not really in a feeding mode. She kind of gets lost a little bit. And then it seems like after I give her the first rat, she goes into a crazy feeding mode. The first rat is definitely the slowest. And then, you know, if I leave her alone, if I just left her alone in there with that rat, it'll be gone probably in 5 minutes. Sometimes it takes her a while to figure it out, and sometimes she finds it, you know, sooner than later. But it seems like she's a little slow on the first one. Right after I separate the male from her, and it's after that she just really goes crazy. And then once she's like on her third or fourth rat, she is in a wild, crazy feeding mode. She starts she starts lunging and biting everything, the top of the enclosure, and just I have some videos, you know, previously where she was just going crazy over those rats. And sometimes she is totally unpredictable and quite frankly pretty frightening at times. So she's just kind of thinking about it a little bit. I don't know. I don't know if I'm gonna have to pause the video. Sometimes, you know, she'll take 5 or 10 minutes to kind of find it. She is a really neat snake, though. I could just watch her all day long. She is pretty amazing. And I think, you know, a lot of people that I've talked to, they pretty much agree that the white albino is probably the most impressive morph of reticulated python. She's a white albino, and the funny thing is there's the purple and the lavender that's associated with the albino. So you can have one copy of the lavender gene, which is the lavender albino, or 2 copies of the lavender, which is a purple albino, which is what my male is. So when I breed these together, all the babies will get 1 copy of the lavender gene. They'll all be lavender albinos. And if I bred the babies together, then I get some lavenders, some purples, and some white albinos. And then they would have some of the super dwarf in. They'd probably be a size between Lucy and the male. So it'd probably be kind of in between. I'd say probably between, you know, 30 and 60 pounds potential size. Maybe 45 pounds. That'd be, you know, I think that'd be an ideal snake, about 45 pounds. It'd be, you know, good to feed some jumbo rats, but not too big where, you know, Lucy's almost getting to the point where if she got a little bit bigger, I don't know if I can handle it by myself, because she is a really big snake. She is just kind of thinking about it. Sometimes she's really gentle when she finds the snakes, and sometimes she's really aggressive and snaps them up. She's just kind of, it almost seems like she can't see it. Sometimes I heat them up under the heat lamp, and I think it helps a little bit, but it seems like all the time on the very first rat, after she's separated, she just doesn't really find the rats that well. And sometimes she'll be really gentle and just kind of slowly put them in her mouth, and sometimes she'll just lunge out and grab them. It's kind of crazy. Well, I may have to pause this while she wanders around and tries to find that crazy rat. So it looks like she might take it right there. And look at how gentle she is. Sometimes she's super gentle when she grabs these rats. She's pretty funny. And I found, you know, sometimes when she really grabs it, she'll get some of that coconut husk substrate in her mouth. And it seems like if she grabs it really slow, she kind of avoids getting any of that substrate in her mouth. And this snake is, I would say this snake is probably I'm most comfortable with this snake handling it versus my other reticulated python. The other one, he was really snappy when he was young. He also used to bite at me all the time. And this one has never snapped at me, never once, except when I'm feeding. And that's when she goes crazy. She's never really snapped out of aggression. She's just kind of snapped in the feeding mode. Okay, so there you have it. That was having fun with some big snakes, and let me tell you, it's always exhilarating. It kind of gives me an adrenaline rush every time, because you never know really what's going to happen. Sometimes when those snakes, they get into wild, crazy feeding mode, it gets really intense. I actually went into Sonny's enclosure once, and I opened up the tub, and I didn't even have a rat, and he lunged out and almost got me right in the stomach. It was crazy. He was just in a crazed feeding mode, and let me tell you that you really have to be careful with those large snakes, because they can lunge out in an instant. You can't even react, they're so fast. It's pretty amazing. And if you're thinking about getting into the big snakes, I would highly recommend doing some kind of a cross with the dwarf or the super dwarf to kind of shrink down the reticulated pythons and get some you can get some really interesting colors and patterns in smaller packages. There's not quite as many morphs as a full mainland reticulated python, but there's still quite a bit of stuff out there. So that's pretty much it. Thanks for watching, and I will see you next time.